I'm Matt Linder. I'm the co-founder and CEO of TruckHouse, and we're here at the LA Auto Show. What else do you guys want to know?
What's your origin story?
What's our origin story? Yeah, so, it's got to take it a ways back, but
Both TruckHouse's origin story and like you, like how did you?
how did I end up here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, so I grew up in a little town called Sonoma, California. That's in the North Bay, wine country. And my dad has a little boatyard in Sausalito. They work on yachts and ferries. So he started that small business before I was born. And yeah, I grew up in Sonoma, playing sports, going to school like any other normal kid. About 13, I started working at the boatyard in summers. So each summer, I would basically do kind of a new role at the shipyard. I started working by sanding the bottom of boats for a whole summer, which is super laborious, not super fun. And then each summer, my dad did a really, good job of kind of transitioning me into a new crew. So I got to learn more aspects of, boat building and boat repair. So, the next summer I would work with the fiberglass crew, and then I'd work with the wood shop crew, and then I'd work with the paint crew and the metal crew and the wiring crew and the mechanics shop. And, so from high school into college, I basically got every summer I'd get a little bit of an education at the boatyard. And it's really hard work. Working on stuff that comes out of salt water is it's a freaking nightmare. So you learn some patience, you learn some work ethic. Everything is big, rusty, and heavy. And you never know what you're about to get into. You might be pulling a fiberglass boat out of water. You might be pulling a wood boat out of salt water, or fiberglass, steel, aluminum. But yeah, that was what I was doing, in terms of making money in summer. In college, I ended up going to UC Davis. And the reason I went to UC Davis was because it's close to Tahoe. My grandpa built a little A-frame in the West Shore. So a little A-frame cabin in 1973 that we still have in my family. It still looks like 1973 inside, so that's pretty rad. But just a little tiny A-frame on the West Shore. I knew if I went to Davis that I could go stay there and ski. So while going to Davis, I was planning to be a doctor. So I studied neurobiology, physiology, and behavior. So I took all the hard classes like organic chemistry and anatomy, and all the sciences, biology and physiology, and basically you name it. Ended up continuing to work at the shipyard in summers and going to school. Once I graduated from Davis, my plan was to move to Tahoe for 6 months, travel around the country and ski on a big mountain series, so be a competitive big mountain skier. So that's what I ended up doing. And that was a pretty fun year, pretty fun 6 months. While I was skiing, I was studying to take the MCAT, so that's how you get placed into medical school. So I was studying to take the MCAT, going skiing. It was April. It was a drought year in Tahoe, where it's finally snowed. We were out in Squaw. Me and my buddies were out skiing around, jumping off every little cliff we could because we didn't have much snow all year. I ended up lining up about a 20 to 25 foot cliff. I had 20 to 25 foot of exposed rock below it, and knew I had to clear the rock. Went to take off, and I dry docked, which means I hit rocks on takeoff. So the snow kind of caved way. So I caught skis, did like a quarter front flip, didn't clear the rocks. Ended up breaking my pelvis. So landed on the rocks, broke my pelvis, put a big laceration around my eye. Remembered from school that I think 55% of people that break their pelvis bleed out and die. And I was like, oh man, I might die. So ended up skiing myself out of where I was, getting some help from ski patrol, ended up getting transported to Truckee, then transported to Reno, and then transported via plane to UC Davis in Sacramento. So I was in 3 hospitals for about 3 weeks. While I was in the hospital, keep in mind, this was right before I was about to take the MCAT to be a doctor. And while I was in the hospital for almost 3 weeks, I realized it wasn't somewhere I wanted to work. So kind of serendipitous timing. I was like, damn, this place sucks. I'm not happy. My doctor's not happy. My parents aren't happy. I was like, I don't know if this is the career path for me. I should have probably studied engineering, but I just didn't want to do any more math. And I thought that from my carpentry and craftsmanship skills from the shipyard, could be a good surgeon, because doing like orthopedic surgery is very much just rudimentary carpentry. I was like, oh man, I can put screws in wood. I can, you're basically cutting bones and screwing stuff back together. I was like, I think I'd be pretty good at this. But yeah, long story short, I realized I didn't want to work there. And so that kind of threw a wrench into my life plans. I was like, dang, I studied really hard to be a doctor, but now I'm not going to go to medical school. So it took all summer to recover, and was like, you know what, I'm not entirely sure what I'm going to do. I think maybe I will go back and get a master's in engineering. Maybe I should go back, learn engineering. I want to build things. I want to design things. So I went back skiing the next winter in Tahoe, had another great year. This year I didn't break anything, so that's pretty sweet. And just really realized like that's what I love to do, was ski and be outside. So while I was figuring out and started studying to take, not the GRE, let me ask Nico. Hey Nico, what's the test you take to get into a master's program? GRE is right. I was right. Yeah. So I was studying to take the GRE in skiing and working in Tahoe as a marine mechanic. And I was like, had another drought year in Tahoe. So I was like, dang, I need to leave Tahoe and chase snow. So I called my dad, who's a big skier, and I go, Dad, where should I live next winter? And he says, you got to live where it's snowing. And I was like, all right, weatherman, like, where is that going to be? Like, there's droughts everywhere. How are you ever going to guess? And he goes, you have to be mobile. And this is well before the van life movement. And I'm like, mobile? He's like, yeah, you got to be able to, like, pack up, move, and live wherever it's snowing. So that, like, sparked this thought in my head of, like, how do I do that? And so I started looking around, and I found a 1987 Toyota Sunrader 4x4. So it's a factory four-wheel drive, super rare. They built 26 of them, so one of 26. I found it. I flew to Vegas. I bought it, drove it home. And then for the next 3 years, I basically ski all winter and work at the shipyard in summer. And after working hours at the shipyard, I'd work on my Sunrader at night. So I ended up putting about 2,000 hours of labor into my 4x4 Sunrader. And it basically looked like here inside. Full fiberglass interior. I did all the glass work on the outside. I resprayed it. And it took me 3 years to finish it. But as I was working on it, I'd see Nico up in Tahoe. Nico was working at the water ski school, and he was getting his mechanical engineering degree. And I kept being like, dude, just wait till you see this camper. And he's like, well, where is it, man? You've been saying that for 3 years. I finally finished it and got it up to Tahoe, and Nico saw it. And he was like, damn, dude, this is sick. I need one. And I was like, I'm never building another old one again in my entire life. So no, you can't have one. But I do want to build new ones. And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, well, I'd like to build brand new versions of this. I'm trying to figure out how to get my master's in engineering. I haven't got that path figured out quite yet. He's like, oh, I'm a mechanical engineer. And I was like, oh, no kidding. Like, you do much CAD modeling? He's like, I do a little bit. I was like, oh, cool. Right on, man. Anyway, we kind of parted ways there, and about 6 months later, he called me and he goes, hey, how serious are you about building new campers? And I said, I'm super serious, man. I'm just like kind of trying to get my ducks in a row and kind of figure out how to do that. He said, I'm getting my MBA at UNR right now, which is University of Nevada, Reno. And he said, I have to write a business plan for one of my master's classes. And I was like, oh, cool. And he's like, so I'll trade you a business plan if you do an engine swap in my 4x4 van because I spun a crank bearing. And I was like, hell yeah, let's do it. I'm thinking as a marine mechanic, I could pull a small block Chevy out of a boat in like 2.5 hours. So I'm like, oh, small block Chevy swap? Like, yeah, dude, I'll come over to your garage. Show up to his garage. It's a Chevy 4x4 van. The hood's like this big. I open it and I'm like, dude, what? I'm like, I think Chevy takes the cab off to like do these engine swaps. Long story short, it took me like 4 weekends. I'd got the engine swapped for him. He wrote me a business plan for his class, but shared it with me. And was like, all right, man, we're square. But I think that this thing has legs. Like, I think this actually is a good plan. And
got ripped off in that deal.
well, here we are, though, dude. So maybe not. So maybe not. So he goes, I think this thing has legs, man. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I appreciate it. And he's like I kind of want to keep pursuing it. I want to be part of it. And I'm like, yeah, dude. I mean, I think I can't do it by myself. I think it's going to be super helpful to have having someone help me. A couple weeks later, he goes, all right, man, there's a business plan contest at UNR. And if we win a grant for $50,000. And he said, I think we should enter. I was like, I mean, I'm down. And both he and I are, super competitive athletes and just competitive people. And so we looked at each other and we got the rubric and we read this whole competition. It was about a 6-month competition. It's called the Sontag competition at UNR. You basically have to write a business plan to get accepted into the contest, and then you do a pitch and deliver a business plan, and then they keep whittling down the crowd. So you do your first one with, whatever it is, 30 different competitors, and there's 20, then there's 10. There ends up being, I think, 5 at the end. We kept progressing through the rounds, and we knew that if we kept utilizing all the university's resources, professors' knowledge, kept going in 3 times a week to have them read it and redline it and keep making it better, that even if we lost, we'd have a good business plan, and then we could decide if we wanted to do it. But being the competitive people we are, we're like, we should probably try and win. Let's win. So we used the Sunrader as our proof of concept, and we wrote a business plan about building new Toyota campers. And we kept progressing through each round, and we made it to the finals. And lo and behold, we ended up winning. So we won a $50,000 grant from the university, which was rad. And the grant had no stipulations. So we could have not spent it on the business. We could have just taken it and not done anything. But we looked at each other and said, man, all these people believe it's a good plan. Let's take this summer off. Let's go. I went back to the shipyard to work. He was a wildland firefighter. We saved money. And then after that summer, when the new 2020 Tacoma came out, we had one on order. And we found a little 2,000 square foot shop in Reno. And truck got delivered, and we showed up. And I lived in my Sunrader in that 2,000 square foot shop. He lived in his 4x4 van. And we started designing. And so it was just Nico and myself for about the first year and a half. And so we designed the thing from the ground up. And we built the first full prototype, basically he and I, and then had started getting a couple guys on board. And that's kind of how it started. And we moved into a little bigger shop and got our molds made and took a lot of big risks. And we're definitely worried that, it's a big composite part. If we failed on the first one, the business was over. So lots of stressful moments, 100 hours a week for 7 days a week for no money. And we ended up making the first part out of the mold and looked at each other, and we really liked it, and had one sold before we had one finished, and off to the races. So that's kind of the how TruckHouse started. And in the next 2 years following that, we produced 8 of those Tacoma campers for customers. And then we had this Ram in development for the last about 2 years. We really wanted to up the game. We really wanted to surface this thing correctly, do a lot more engineering and design. And we just launched what we're sitting in now earlier this year. So part of our business plan and part of the business plan from the contest was we only had, so these things are built out of big molds, right? And that's the biggest capital expenditure of this whole endeavor is the design and cost of the molds. So some people call it tooling, same thing. But when Nico and I started, we only had the money to do what's called a direct mold or a prototype mold. So those have a limited number of parts you can pull out of them. So they say you can get, they're designed for 1 part. The mold maker said we could get 3 parts. He and I were like, let's do 8 at least. So we knew we could only do 8 Tacomas. We sold those in actually really short fashion. So for the 2 years of production, we weren't really selling. But we knew that the Tacoma was going to change because we had some inside sources. So we're like, if we can get 8 of these things done before the 5th gen Tacoma comes out, we'll be in a good spot. And we knew that the molds didn't have much more life than that. So as soon as we finished the 8th shell, we ended up scrapping those molds, knowing that we were moving on to the Ram platform. And, being a true Toyota guy at heart, and the business was really focused around building a modern Sunrader, which was super small and compact. It's definitely a hard transition, but as a businessman, we knew that stretching Tacoma frames and doing all the back half fabrication and building axles and long travel and supercharger and big brakes and was a shit ton of work, a lot of liability, and we knew that we should focus on our core competency, which is building these giant, beautiful, one-piece carbon fiber parts. Because there's a lot of dudes who can build trucks, not a ton of guys who can build the composites. So as a business case, we were like, dude, we should not build the whole truck. Like, it'd be hard to have hundreds of those on the road when we did so much fabrication and so much, we're responsible for so many parts. And we were sitting in the office while we were wrapping up Tacoma, or before we were wrapping up Tacoma production, about halfway through, Nico and I were sitting in the office, and he's like, man, how nice would it be if someone built the trucks for us? And I was like, that sounds really nice. Like, I'm pretty sick of cutting and welding on a brand new truck. That's pretty silly, really. And I'm like, yeah, man, like, imagine if AEV built us the trucks. And I'm a dreamer, and Nico's a realist, so, like, that's pretty sweet. It makes, like, really good yin and yang. I'm like, what if AEV built us the trucks, man? And Nico goes, dude, they're so big that if they wanted to build campers, they don't need us. And I'm like, maybe they do. Maybe we need some shit that they don't know. Maybe they need us. Maybe they want to do this. And so we kind of talked about that for a while, and then Expo season came around, and I called Graham from Go Fast Camper. I'm like, hey, Graham, do you know AEV Dave? Like, I follow him on Instagram. That's, like, how I knew him. You know AEV Dave? He's like, oh, yeah, man. He's a super good guy. It's like, can you bring him by one of our trucks at Overland? He's like, oh, yeah, absolutely, no problem. So, yeah, Graham brought Dave by, and Nico and I talked to Dave for about 2 hours and gave him a full tour of the Tacoma. Dave started AEV out of a Missoula business plan contest like 25 years ago. So he was like, wow, like, I see myself in you guys. You guys are ambitious as hell, maybe a little crazy, but I think I can help you. I've been wanting to build a camper like what you're talking about for a long time. I just haven't had the time. I can definitely supply you with trucks, and maybe I can point you in the right way in terms of engineering. And so as we started to develop this, we became better friends with Dave and the guys at AEV. And so they really helped us really gain, 10 years of engineering knowledge in like a year. So it was like, I always equate it to, if you're talking about like MLB baseball, like Ford, Chevy, and Ram are Major League Baseball. AEV is like the best college team in the entire country. And then like TruckHouse was playing T-ball, and Dave was like, you guys want to come practice? And we're like, we play T-ball, dude. You want us to practice? You want us to practice freaking in college ball? And he was like, yeah, come on, man. You guys will be all right. And we ended up being all right. But it's been a pretty big jump, and been a hell of a cool collaboration to be part of. I looked up to Dave in the AEV since I was like 14. So pretty wild that he's like a buddy of mine now, that we just got back from a Moab trip with him, and that we can call him at any point and get, advice and feedback. And he calls us at random hours of the night to say things like, hey, put PPF behind the grab handle because it's going to scratch with fingernails, or just any type of thing. We need to integrate skid plates. We need to think about aerodynamics, and we listen because that dude's basically a legend, incredibly smart. And so we worked with them and came up with this whole concept, and we built a prototype for ourselves on that regular cab, and we're sitting in the double cab, full interior, and we're in production for customers. So pretty exciting times, and yeah.
Was there like a lot of crossover in that? There's been a crossover from building boats to building these?
Yeah, absolutely. So like I was saying, at the shipyard, we haul out everything. So steel, aluminum, wood, and fiberglass. And if you haul out steel, wood, and aluminum, you're always going to find, on aluminum, you're going to find oxidation. On steel, you're going to find rust. On wood, you're going to find rot. on fiberglass, the worst thing you're ever going to find is like a gel coat blister. Like, that's not structural. So I knew right away that that was the correct way to build something that you wanted to last. It also enables you to have such beautiful shapes. Boats aren't flat at all. They have nice curves, and they're designed for hydrodynamics. We're designed for aerodynamics. It's very similar. And then, you know, going in RVs growing up, you know that RVs are junk and yachts are not. So we're really definitely we're inspired by the marine industry, and we try and pick marine finishes, marine appliances, big.
That looks like it's out of a yacht.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And then yachts are very weight conscious, durability conscious, material choice conscious, because saltwater is a very harsh environment. So if you build something like this camper with the intent that it's going to sit in saltwater its whole life, it's going to live on land like effortlessly for such a long time. And it's, yeah, the like big box RV space, they have statistics about how many use cases or use nights they get that fulfill their warranty. So a lot of the big, we call them white box RVs, are really just building the biggest, cheapest box they can. So they're not worried about putting in the best water pump. You know, I think it's something like 41 nights of use gets them through their entire warranty period. So they're designed for like 41 nights of use. There's no reason for them to put a better water pump in or worry about the thing leaking. Like, they know it's going to leak. They all leak. But it's way past the warranty period. Most people only use RVs 3 weekends a year, 3 holiday weekends a year. They sit around and they end up in an RV graveyard, basically, a big dump in the middle of the desert. That's where they all end up. Their values plummet. Yachts are the complete opposite way. So you can have a beautiful 1972 Stevens, which is a nice, you know, 40, 50-foot yacht that's been well kept forever and has continued to be in use. So we definitely wanted to have that mentality and build an heirloom product that like could be passed on for generation to generation and be maintained and well kept, with no intention of it ever not being repairable or ending up in an RV graveyard. So yeah, very, very similar. The one-piece carbon fiber shell is, one, it's fully repairable if you did damage it, but it's not really going to get damaged from just sitting around. Say you got in a car accident, it can be fixed using aerospace and marine repair techniques, basically. So it's fully repairable. But the worst that's going to happen is like the clear coat's going to fail. It could get repainted and look brand new. Same with these cabinets. They're all fiberglass. So they're also not going to ever rot, warp, move, shrink, crack. So same thing. If you got them filthy or you couldn't freaking, or you, I don't know, someone damaged one of these from doing something crazy, they could be repaired and they could be repainted. So it's not like, they're not screwed into the wall, they're actually fixed to the shell. So this, nothing can vibrate loose, nothing's gonna rot, you're not gonna lose a bunch of fasteners. Like, this is actually part of the camper, this is part of the camper. So yeah, it's hopefully lasts forever. Hopefully outlives the life of the truck. And you know, the OEMs are really good at making their trucks repairable. You could put a new Cummins in this, you could put a new transmission in this 500,000 miles later, and this thing could continue to go down the road, service ball joints, all that type of stuff, and make the truck brand new again too. So that's really important to us. We as TruckHouse, we covered all of it. So that is, you know, luckily we haven't had a ton of problems, but that's something that we knew that we were taking on once we kind of touched that engine or touched that axle, or that's our warranty. What's really nice about this Ram and working with AEV is that this thing is covered under factory warranty. We listen to the bodybuilder's guide, so there's a guide for if this was an ambulance or this was a flatbed or a service truck. So Ford, Chevy, and Ram all have bodybuilder guides with guidelines that you're supposed to follow, where you can drill holes, where you can't, where you can weld, where you can't, all that type of stuff. So we really follow that as closely as possible to make sure that this thing can roll into any dealer. You know, and what makes it unique compared to a lot of our competitors is we're so weight conscious and lightweight that we can be on a 3500. And so being on a 3500 means you don't have to go to a commercial dealer to have this thing serviced. So it can go to any Ram dealer. And then also we're not on the military wheel and tire. So once you go to a 5500, you have to go to that military wheel and tire, and that makes it kind of a service nightmare for our customers. No Big O, no Les Schwab, no tire center that we know about is going to touch that thing, whether you're at your home or in the middle of a road trip. They don't touch those bead locks. It's a big liability kind of worry. These big 40-inch tires, you can go to a Big O, you can go to a Les Schwab, they can rotate it, they can fix a flat, they can order you a new one from PFG and put it on. I mean, we're really trying to think about the experience the user is going to have, and it's all about going camping with less worry. The more you have to think about service or drive all the way back to where the thing was manufactured to get a truck part fixed, the less you're camping and the more of a headache it becomes. So we're really conscious that we want people camping and not worrying, and if they have a problem with the truck, we want Ram to take care of it. And AEV parts are like lifetime warranty, and they never have problems because their engineering is like through the roof. So we're really trying to get on that level. At TruckHouse, like Nico and myself have really kind of grown the culture of perfectionism, which is, it's good and bad, but the thing about it is we're always chasing it. So when I built my Sunrader, I was 24 years old, and my level of perfect was here. And when I finished the Sunrader, I only got to here. And then when we built the Toyotas, with all that newfound knowledge and skill that I had gained and all the brain power I had gained from Nico, our level of perfect got above where it was. And when we finished the Toyota, we only got to here. With all the knowledge we got from that and the skills and knowledge we learned from AEV, our level of perfect is now here. This Ram is done, and in our minds, we're still here. So it's a perpetual cycle of chasing perfect, which is amazing for innovation, amazing for the product. It's a little hard mentally sometimes because you realize that you're never going to get there. But it's a perpetual chase, and in my mind, as soon as you stop chasing it, you stop innovating, you stop growing, and the product starts to fail from it. And like, you know what they say, like what I like to say in the shop is good enough isn't. Because a lot of people, like, oh, how's the fit of this pantry? Oh, it's good enough. Like, no, it's not. Like, is it perfect? Is it as perfect as you can make it? Then it's good. And then the other thing we say is perfect is the evil of good, because if you chase perfect until you actually hit it, you'll never put anything to market because you'll actually never get there. So you have to find that happy medium of where we're chasing that perfect as hard as we absolutely can, but we also have to push something to market. And if you chase something you can never catch, then you're never going to produce a product that people buy. So it's a weird perpetual cycle of us, chasing it, and we'll never catch it. We have a good team, man. It's a young team. Nelson and myself are the oldest guys on the team. So everybody's young, everybody's hungry, everybody works hard as hell. Everyone wears multiple hats. We've trained all the guys how to do all the composites work. We do all composites, paint, interior, steel fab, wiring, plumbing, CAD design, all in a little tiny shop with a bunch of young guys. And it's going to be really fun to see where we end up in the next 5 years, I think. We always say, it's like, being at the LA Auto Show, super amazing. We get so much positive response. So many people love it. But we like to remind people that it's all about creating that memory, creating that experience. And you don't need one of these, very expensive, over-the-top vehicles to do it. It's a great way to do it if you can afford it. But really, you want to get out and do it. So put an air mattress in the back of your Subaru. Put a rooftop tent on your 4Runner. You don't need a $500,000 or $1 million vehicle to go out and do it. If you're waiting for that to do it, you're never going to do it. So go experience it, create those memories, create those experiences. That's what it's all about. And, if you can do it in a truck house, it's, in my opinion, a very biased opinion probably, but it's the best way. But if not, just go do it.